Hi, everybody. Thank you for coming. And as I just said in the last session with Doris, next year we'll do this in Greenland. Beautiful there.
Panama is a little bit nicer for me, weather-wise.
Yeah, it's humid, though.
Yeah,
humid.
I don't mind it.
Tim Miller was one of my go-to stalwarts when we did our tiny, modest, but ambitious cable show for all those years. And I'm in his debt because every time he came on with me, he had a number one material, and we got to look at the pinto bean poster behind him in his house. It was a very scary time, a dark time, and I was in my basement. And where is that pinto bean poster?
Yeah, well, it wasn't really the art that I was trying to show off in my house. I do have to say, it was the Zoom corner.
Yeah.
It was like on the first floor. It was in the corner of the house where we were doing Zooms.
What municipality were you living in?
I was living in Oakland at the time before we moved to New Orleans, and so we had better art in other places of the house.
You say I've seen no proof of that.
Exactly, but so I didn't realize that we were going to be stuck in our homes for a year and that I would be branded the pinto beans man. But now I am, and I've moved it with me to New Orleans.
Good.
And,
you have to own it at some point.
I think it was on your show one time. The stairs were right behind me, and my daughter at that time was like 3, and she did make one appearance on your show. She was luckily short enough that you couldn't see her, so it didn't get viral video, but you could hear her right there on the stairs.
I had to approve the AFTRA SAG payment to her. So we're just, as I said last night or the 2 nights ago during the John, these are my questions for Tim. That is by way of saying if the two of us can't have a conversation about what's going on, neither of us deserves to be here. That's where you come in.
Okay.
What are we seeing transpire right now? And I realize it's early yet. There will be 5 more lead stories before dinner.
Yeah. It's tough to follow it all. I mean, look, at the biggest level, I think the answer is we don't really know exactly what is going to happen. I do think that there are some things that are permanently changed, though. And I was doing an interview with John Lovett, and we were talking about this a while back, and it's like sometimes you have 2 doors, and you go through one, and the door closes behind you. And I think that there's some things that are in the past that are going to be hard for us to reanimate when you talk about America's role in the world.
Okay.
Right? Me and Carl had a little disagreement on this on the last segment, but if you're the Europeans or the Central Americans or in Africa, why would you ever trust us again? Right? Like there was this period from 1945, post-World War II through 2016, where there was a Western rules-based order. Our alliance was based on our shared values, on democracy. The U.S. you knew was trustworthy. Sometimes we do dumb stuff from time to time, but you knew that, like, on balance, we were directionally aligned, and those countries could trust us. That's over now. If you're sitting in Belgium or, Panama, how could you think that we're a reliable partner anymore? You got to start looking for other partners and start doing things differently. So I think the Western rules-based order is probably dead, but certainly deeply damaged. And I think that some of the traditions and norms of the way that we do politics in this country are permanently changed too. And I don't know how you're going to roll back the way that Donald Trump and Elon Musk are going to just take a sledgehammer to these institutions. I mean, some of it will be rebuildable, but I think some of it will be permanently scarred if we get past it, which is also just an if right now. So that's uplifting start for everybody.
How long do you give the Trump-Musk relationship?
Yeah, so here's the thing. The instinctual answer to that is TikTok, right?
Right. Don't order monogram towel.
Yeah, exactly. But the Elon situation is very different than the other Trump lackeys. I was interviewing Steve Bannon a couple months ago at one of these MAGA festivals.
And you don't like to brag.
Well, yeah, it wasn't. It wasn't the life highlight, let me tell you. I want to at least know what these guys are thinking. And he obviously has been speaking out against Musk because they're not aligned. And so I was asking him what he thought about this question. And publicly, there's a lot of bravado. Elon Musk will never be around. But privately, he was like, man, he gave $250 million to the campaign. he's got unlimited money that he can use to bully MAGA foes. He's got his own media platform. He's got hundreds of millions of followers, some of who are devotees of him more than Trump, right? And so Trump can't just fire him on the tarmac like he did Reince Priebus, my old boss. Reince had no juice. If he moves on from Reince, there's no whatever. You're gone. I'll find another guy who'll do what I want. If he does that to Elon, that's risky. Elon might start going after him. Like a bad breakup could be very bad for Trump. So I think Elon has a lot more power in this situation than really any of the other lackeys have had. So eventually, you don't make any money saying that Donald Trump's going to have a good long-term positive relationship with people taking attention from him. But I think that Elon will last a little longer than the others.
I'm 65. I presume this is my kind of demographic that I'm looking at. So coming up as a space geek kid, summer of 1969, everything was NASA. Everything was NASA, NASA, NASA. We were still a limitless country, or so we thought. We were going to the moon. And I was aware cognitively that you would see an occasional Rockwell logo when they were showing pictures of the command module. And I knew that Grumman out on Long Island had made the lunar lander. It was only when I became an adult that I figured out that NASA was basically a collection of contractors with a central home office, and great rigor and science went into it. When is someone going to realize that Elon Musk is a federal contractor who sends real live humans into space under cover of the American flag?
The biggest federal contractor. I want to say one nice thing about Elon first, and then that will be probably the last nice thing.
Let me make sure we're rolling on
Okay,
this.
yeah, everybody can get it on tape. There's something to be said for the fact that the U.S. government picked a couple of contractors and said, we need to create some low-orbit satellites, and we can't do it ourselves, and we're going to give some money to Boeing, we're going to give some money to you, and let's see what happens. And his company was the only one that could do it. And so, as a former Republican, there's still something to, we need people that have ingenuity, that are going to cut red tape, that want to cut through the BS, that want to actually get stuff done. I wish that was the Elon that we had, that we were getting, because I think that could be a potentially useful thing for the government. There are some things that need to be shaken up. We haven't sent. I don't know if you noticed, we're not sending people to space anymore. Elon's got to go up and save people that are up there. Yeah. So that part, I think, is something that I'm sympathetic to. Here's the problem. That Elon is gone. This guy is red-pilled. His brain is broken. He sent 200 tweets yesterday in 24 hours, 200. He's also running 3 companies and tearing apart the government. He's got 22-year-old kids that have read access to Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid services. And this is madness. The government is very complex. You can't just go in with a sledgehammer and just crush everything. You're a private equity guy trying to strip a company down for parts. The government does things that are needed. And so to me, that Elon is very dangerous. And then you add on to it the point of your question, the fact that he's not just some rogue operator inside the government. He's a rogue operator that also is the biggest recipient of federal government cash, who has random vendettas against other companies that get government money. It is an unprecedented situation. I was asking Ann Applebaum about this on Tuesday, and I was like, is there a version of this in Hungary or Czechoslovakia we could learn from? And she's like, there's nothing like this anywhere. There are oligarchs places, but somebody that is a donor and a contractor and a media man, that's without precedent.
I neglected to ask John Meacham if he still stands by this comment. He made it midway through the pandemic, midway through the Trump years. He said the United States has one functioning political party. But join me in speculating that...
We have 0?
Well, do they regard themselves as, I don't know if you noticed the election results, people, we're a functioning damn political party.
I don't remember the context of the Meacham quote, so I'll say this. They're a functioning political party if you just think about political parties' job as winning elections. And I've been saying this for a while. People love to get me on the show and be like, Tim, when's the Republican Party's last days? The collapse is imminent. And I've always been kind of like, I don't actually think so. As far as campaigns are concerned, like the Trump strategy hasn't always worked. He has some losses, but he has some wins, and there's a big appetite out there among, maybe not a majority of the country, but a strong minority of the country for what the Republicans are offering. What they are not is a functioning governing party. And we haven't seen that. Like, they can't do anything. Like a lot has happened over the first 18 days, you might notice. No bills have been passed.
No.
The House hasn't done anything. The Senate hasn't done anything. I don't think they can do it. I don't think they can keep the government open. I don't think they can do anything. I mean, they couldn't even elect a leader. Like, it took 8 days. So I don't think they're a functioning governing party. The Democrats might be the inverse. A non-functioning political campaign operation, but like a basically functioning governing party that you might have some disagreements on policy issues, but are able to kind of keep the lights on.
Let's take that opportunity to bash the Democrats
for
a while.
Easy.
What are their current sins as you see them?
How long do we have? We have 33 minutes left?
Other than having no game.
Yeah, well, so I think that there's the substantive side of it, and then there's kind of like the politics, right? And so on the substantive side, look, the Democrats aren't doing a particularly great job in governing the areas where they have full control. And I think that it has given a lot of, and I think a lot of regular folks feel pretty disillusioned with progressive governance in the big cities in this country. Sorry, here in California, as a California expat, I can say it's hard to be a middle, the cost of living is so high in these places. The crime stuff is now kind of getting back out of control, but it got out of control, particularly in blue areas, and particularly in big blue cities. And I think that there are a lot of people that have progressive or liberal social values that are just like, I don't think that the government is working for me in blue places. And I think that the Democrats would be wise to focus on that, particularly in the states. There are some exceptions. Maybe the best governor in the country is my home state, not my current state, but my home state of Colorado, Governor Jared Polis. He's great. Like, they're good Democratic. Josh Shapiro's doing a great job in Pennsylvania, but in like the blue bubbles, not as good. Politically speaking, the Democrats just don't have a gut message that they're offering to people. And like Donald Trump, say what you want about him, but it's like pretty simple. Make America great again. America first. I'm going to get back at the people that you hate. I'm going to fight for you. Like, it's on the hat, right? What was on Kamala's hat? Nobody knew, right? And I think Kamala did really good in a tough situation, but there wasn't a core gut message for like why she was connecting with people in the way that Obama successfully did, right? And I think that it's going to take me and Liz Smith were talking about this earlier, it's going to take a little while for the Democrats to find the positive aspirational message, but for God's sakes, right now, they could at least do the negative side of that message well, and like have gut and have fight, and like think about how Donald Trump and Mitch McConnell treated Democratic presidents. Like, the Democrats should be treating Donald Trump like that. Like, and right now, we're starting to see a little bit of it, but we're not seeing enough. So yeah, so those are just a few minor issues: governing, message, and strategy.
If those are important. Yeah, as I have said repeatedly, culturally, Democrats are all former student council presidents. Yeah. Republicans in this era are stone cold killers. Yeah. If the Democrats don't learn those communication skills, they are bound to repeat what we just saw. In my lifetime, they have lost the entire working class. The entire working class. Yeah. They have gone to kale and quinoa and Whole Foods. So
I love kale and quinoa.
Well, look at you.
Exactly. Exactly. Stop trying to win me.
If I can, these guys who come in here, with their fancy affectations, just drives.
It's gross.
Drives me crazy. Anyway,
got to take the show on the road.
My buddies in the working class feel they're being judged every day they're being graded for a test they didn't have the opportunity to study for. They fear they're going to put a pronoun wrong. They're going to misgender the nice person helping them at Home Depot. We saw yesterday's press event at the White House. It's fair to say 85% of Americans feel there is something fundamentally unfair, and I've said this before, going to their daughter's swimming meet when the swimmer in lane 3 has visible male genitalia under the Speedo. So some of these things have to change, but still there are a slew of Democrats who continue to fetishize these issues.
Yeah, this is a tough one, right? Because for me, it's outrageous that a draft-dodging president with bone spurs is going to kick people out of the military who are bravely serving the military because they're transgender. Like, that's outrageous to me. And I think that the American people would be with us on that, actually, if it was framed like that. The problem is the problem is when you're talking about it, to just go back to that main Trump ad, like, where it makes people feel like you care more about, representing every different gender identity under the sun than you care about them, right? And so, like, that is it. So if this is when I go back to, like, the Democrats right now, there's an opportunity for someone to grab the mantle and be like, I am a fighter. I'm going to fight for you. I'm going to fight for working people. And within that rubric, you can fight for trans people in the military. They're getting kicked out. And you can fight for FBI inspectors general that are getting kicked out. Right? If you do it within the frame of, I will fight this man. I'm going to take him on. I'm going to take him on behalf of you. But your student council president thing is, where is that gut and fire? That is what I need. And I think that a lot of these...
who are the killers? Name names. Give the folks some hope. Who's that bench?
The Democratic Party?
We have 27.
Yeah. So I mean, look, this is my problem. So I think we don't know. I think that there's a vacuum that needs to be filled for the killer. I think there are a lot of great Democrats that are doing well governing their states. I mentioned Polis and Shapiro. Abigail Spanberger, I like. She's going to run for governor of Virginia. Mikey Sherrill, I like. She's going to run for governor of New Jersey. If I had to go to a dinner party with the Democratic House, of representatives, it'd be great. Like, there are a lot of smart people and interesting people and accomplished people. Like, the Republican dinner party, you'd be like, I would rather do it, like, pull my toenails out than go hang out with most of these people. Like, it's just that they're not accomplished and weird. But there's something missing there, right? Like, when you're drafting all of the people that were the valedictorian and the class president, like, then the culture becomes very... attuned to the concerns of really high-achieving, agreeable people. And I think that has become a problem for the Democrats. I don't know. I was doing an interview at some point where we were having a conversation on the podcast, and somebody's like, all of the cranks and the conspiracy theorists and the people that have strange views have all aligned under Donald Trump, and all of the smart people have aligned among Kamala. And I was like, that's a bad sign, actually. Because there are a lot of people out there with different kinds of views and strange views. You know what I mean? Like, you can't win elections with only the people that achieved highly in their high school and went to a liberal arts school. Like, you can't. And so the Democrats have some people. Jared Golden is like a guy up there who is like a working class guy. I'm hopeful for Wes Moore. I'm not sure. Like, he's the governor of Maryland. Like, he's a guy that I think can really connect with people at a different level. And I'm hoping that maybe some of these other folks will let their hair down a little bit, and it will kind of emerge, like that their ability. Like, look, J.D. Vance. Well, he improved a ton though over the campaign. You have to just say it, right? And so politicians can improve. Like, they can find. They can find their voice or find their footing, and so maybe there's some people that exist that are going to do that.
You're a young man. Can you believe that in just the course of your time in politics, you worked for Jeb?
I know.
Jeb, who was a perfectly acceptable presidential candidate, along with Kasich, Mitt Romney, people that American Democrats would happily live under as president.
Yeah.
that era is so done and dusted and gone.
It's gone.
With or without the explanation point.
Without, yeah. And no, it's gone. The exclamation point has been erased, and Jeb's back, hanging out with the grandkids. Look, man, I do think that, again, there's some people that fit that mold in the Democratic Party. The question is that what the American people want right now? And maybe at some point in the future we'll tack back to this. Like you said, I'm young. I got a big runway ahead of me. I hope maybe in 30 years we'll tack back and I'll be like, man, we've got some real patriots and we got some real people in charge now who care about the country more than themselves. I don't think that's what people are looking for. It's something about globalization, our phones, and what is happening in our culture that folks are just unhappy. And they're not looking for somebody like Jeb or Mitt Romney or, Hillary, for that matter, who are technocrats who are like, we're going to protect the order, we're going to change things on the margins.
Speak in complete sentences.
Yeah, we're going to speak in complete sentences. That's not what people are looking for, right? Like, people want to overturn the apple cart. Not everybody, but enough of a majority of the country wants that right now, and the Democrats need to find somebody that can channel that, because the Republicans are not going back. Like the Jack Danforth was here. I saw him earlier. There's no Jack Danforth walking through that door for the Republican Party in any time soon, right? Like, it's going to be Trumpers all the way down because it's what Republican voters want, and so you got to play on that field.
Think of that Republican tradition. You mentioned Danforth, Lowell Weicker, Mac Mathias of Maryland. There was such a robust center.
Yeah.
Just guys, and they were all guys at that time that you could depend on.
Yeah, and the center is kind of shifting, right? So sometimes I think a lot of times in these rooms, when people think about centrists, you kind of think about me, right? Like the
I think about you all the time.
Yeah, I bet you do. You got my picture on your wall,
Sure.
and like in the Wikipedia next to centrist, it's like somebody that wants to have some fiscal, conservatism, but like also cares about liberal social values and is reasonable and, kind of has a moderate view about America's role in the world, right? That's what people think about when they think moderate. The Republicans are getting a different kind of moderate, right? Those types of moderates that you are talking about, they're all gone. They're not going to be in the party anytime in the visible future. But what the Republicans have done is realign to take people that are the inverse, that are culturally conservative, right? And want to be part of the culture war, but aren't really interested in foreign interventionism, right? Like, they're maybe culturally conservative when it comes to woke stuff and crime and immigration, but they're not pro-life. They're not religious, multi-week churchgoers, right? It's a different kind of person, and the Republicans did a really good job of appealing to that person. And I think it happened outside of the view of a lot of people in, the pockets of prosperity, as my friend Stuart Stevens calls it, because they don't know a lot of people like that. But there are a lot of them out there, and they're listening to Joe Rogan and Theo Vaughn, and they're not ideologues. They're moderate, but just not in the way that Jack Danforth, they're not in the way that we would like.
Would you have been surprised if I had told you at the start of the Biden administration that the weakest member of the cabinet was going to be Merrick Garland?
No. I wish I would have been surprised. I was worried about it. We are all, look, people I do think this is why people give a hell what I think. Right? Like, there's some interest in the kind of us, the never Trumpers, because we kind of maintain that Republican desire to kill, and to fight, and like there's a need for that right now. And I was nervous immediately with the Merrick Garland pick, that he was not going to take this challenge on, that he wanted to maintain these norms that are kind of broken. And so, going back to your very first question, like, some things are permanently changed. You can't put the toothpaste back in the tube on some of these procedural norms and have one side playing by one set of rules and the other side, playing Calvin ball. You remember Calvin and Hobbes?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, Calvin got to make up all the rules. You can't do that.
I'm all over this material.
Okay, got it. All right, great. Maybe not everybody. Maybe not everybody's a big Calvin and Hobbes person, but you can't do that. Like, that's eventually, the side that's not playing by any rules is going to win, right? Because they have a huge advantage. And so I was worried about that with Merrick Garland from the start. But honestly, I think the weakest member of the Joe Biden administration was Joe Biden. And I think that unfortunately, he's a good person that let us down. And his biggest mistake wasn't Merrick Garland. It was the fact that he promised that he would be a bridge to the next generation. And then
stayed too long at the
not only did he stay too long, but he picked somebody in Kamala Harris who I really like, who was the obvious successor. So if you say I'm going to be the bridge to the next generation, you have two options, right? He could have picked a VP that was, I don't know, Barbara Boxer or something, right, who is not going to run for president, and then said, who knows what the next generation will hold. Or he could pick an obvious successor, which he did in Kamala. Then he picked her, and then because of his ego, he saddled her with the worst possible kind of projects and job. He's like, oh yeah, you deal with the root causes of immigration. Good luck. Good luck out there, kid. We'll see how that works. And she was uncomfortable, and I think that they isolated her, and they didn't set her up for success. And then when he finally had to step aside, he didn't say, you do what you need to do, kid. Throw me under the bus, whatever. I got your back. We got to beat this guy. No, he kind of complained about it, and he was like, you're not giving me enough attention at the DNC convention, and he didn't give her a pass to distance herself from him, and she felt like she had to be loyal to him. I think that he just really saddled us with a really bad situation because he cared a lot about his legacy, and I think that his legacy is going to be deeply tarnished because of it, and I think that's really what it comes down to.
So you agree with the Carville point that the ultimate irony, the man who came back to save his country, save democracy, will be seen as the most tragic figure in modern political history because he stayed too long at the fair.
I do. And I don't really know what the other side of the argument is, to be honest. So I think it is really tragic, but it actually makes me a little mad too. I have to say I'm a little mad at him because it was what happened in that debate in June was it was unwatchable. Groaning, yeah, it was unwatchable. My phone exploding. The number of people who said I had to turn it off, I couldn't watch it. It was so obvious in that moment. And I understand the rationale that got him to that moment. I don't agree with it, but I understand it. But when that happened, you have to recognize, and your wife has to recognize, and your kid has to recognize, and your advisors have to recognize that we are in a crisis and that the very fabric of our democracy is in threat, and you need to do everything possible to save it. And you need to leave, and you need to empower Kamala, and you need to, everything. And he did the opposite. And they all did the opposite. They dilly-dallied for weeks in making the decision. And then, like I said, then they passed the baton to her and I think set her up for failure in a lot of ways. So I don't know. I think she did very well in some bad circumstances. I could nitpick a few things that the campaign did. But look, you could nitpick all the campaigns I was on. I think it was really Biden fundamentally that was the fault.
Sincere question about that dynamic. Do you think it was the frog boiling experiment? Do you think that those who had seen him every day, the Dunns, the Klains, the Kaufmans, the Donlins, we all know that crowd.
Yeah.
Or were they part of a mob family that was bought into silence? Because there was a hell of a lot of gaslighting that went on in that campaign.
I think it was both. In the one sense, it was frog boiling because had Kamala won, and it was a little closer than people like to pretend, 200,000 votes in 3 states. It was a bigger win for Trump than it should have been, but it was winnable. Had Kamala won, the fact that they did that debate would have been the luckiest thing in history, right? In that counterfactual, during the campaign, I was like, thank God he had the debate, because if he hadn't, imagine the fall campaign with him being unable to speak.
Couldn't complete it.
It would have been unbearable. So to me, the fact that they agreed to do the debate made me think that they genuinely thought that he was up for it and that there was a frog boiling element to it. That the big guy, he'd do it like he did in the State of the Union, and that he'd be up for the job and he can rise to the occasion. So that makes me think it was a bit the frog boiling more than the cover up. That said, they were protecting him in a way that was in retrospect, I think that they thought was strategic. I don't think it was a cover-up. They thought it was strategic. In retrospect, it was catastrophic.
The people around him, if you look back, while he was running, they knew enough to get the stammering issue out into the public domain. A lot of people who'd come up in the modern era did not know his history. So there was the moment with the little kid in the crowd, Joe Biden exchanging his phone number, telling him to call me. That was all very sincere. That was all part of the DNA of Joe Biden. Do you think there was any upside in him going a little deeper during his presidency to talk about what we all saw with our own eyes, to give a speech that said, like a lot of older Americans, I have something called spinal stenosis, and it stiffens me when I try to walk or move. Like a lot of you, I have neuropathy. I can't feel the bottom of my feet, which has shortened my strides, and I fall more than I used to. I'm less steady. This is part of life, but it doesn't speak to the degradation we saw on that debate stage when he seemed mystified by simply attending.
Yeah, I don't know that it would help. I mean, the stutter thing, he has a stutter, and I'm sympathetic to all that, but like, you just watch a video of Joe Biden from 1996.
Right.
And like, it wasn't the stutter. Like, I mean, just watch forget 1996, watch his debate with Paul Ryan, right? Where he mopped the floor with Paul Ryan. He still had a stutter then, but he was fine. So it wasn't just the stutter, right? So I don't know. I just don't think he was up for it. Like, fundamentally, here's the thing. They were making a calculation, which I do think was defensible, which was like, he's the president, he's going to run, he's going to win, we got to put him in the best situation to win. Trump's so crazy. If we just protect him and it seems like things are on the tracks and we get this legislation done, we talk about his record, that people will choose the safer option. And that was their bet. Like, we're not in that world, anymore, right? Like, people, how they deal with their presidents is very different than FDR and doing radio, doing fireside chats.
Take
right?
out the maps and follow the Allied victory with us.
People are following stuff on their phone. They see it minute by minute. And I don't think that it was a strategic thing. Like, Biden couldn't do it. Right? Like, in 2028, the Democrats need somebody that is everywhere, that is getting people's attention, that is out there with the people, putting his or her hands on them and like talking about how he cares about them or she cares about them and going into the fire halls. And Biden didn't have it. Like, he didn't have he couldn't have done it. So I don't know that it mattered what he talked about. He wasn't up for it.
The one firehouse he went into, he was talked into putting a MAGA hat on, and that picture lives forever.
Yeah. And again, here's the thing though, that wouldn't have got Trump, right? And here's why. Is that Trump, if he puts on a Biden hat as a joke and it goes around as a meme, then the next day he's like, oh, I was just making fun of Sleepy Joe Biden. He's an idiot. And I went on this podcast and, obviously I'm not, you know what I mean? Like, Trump would just talk through it. He just blows through it. He's a force of nature. I mean, he's awful, but he's a force of nature. Biden, like, imagine Biden doing a interview with you. Like we're going to have a fireside chat the next day. We're going to stream it on whatever. And Brian Williams and Biden are going to talk, and you're like, what was the deal with the hat? Like, could he have explained it? No, he couldn't have. Maybe in his head he could. He just wasn't up for it. And like, if you're not up for it, I feel bad for him. But you have to be a grown up and be responsible and say, all right, we need to move on. I mean, I'm just saying we all have limitations. If the fate of American democracy rested on a tug of war, I wouldn't volunteer to be on the team.
And I'm from New Jersey.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Like, I'm not very strong. Like, there are a lot of things I can't do. Like, the one thing Joe Biden couldn't do was campaign for president this time, and that's unfortunately was a pretty important part of his job.
Give people a preview of the midterms, please.
The midterms are going to be great, as long as
that's all the time we have. Thank you very much.
As long as there's no foul play, which I don't think is a guarantee.
Nah, come on. Next, you're going to tell us there's gambling.
So I'm a little bit concerned about that side. But here's the thing: there's been we talked about this a little bit yesterday. There's been a reorientation of the coalitions, and so us kale eating, quinoa eating, pearl wearing, college educated parents that go to the kids' school board meeting. We have moved over into broadly the Democratic coalition. The Republicans in that trade have picked up a lot of people that don't watch the news religiously, don't have a high conscientiousness. I'm not saying this judgmentally. I'm just describing the coalitions. they don't vote as much in midterms. It used to be the opposite, right? Like Republicans had more conscientious voters who showed up at the midterms.
100%.
That's changed. It's flipped. So the Democrats go into the midterms with a big advantage of having a better coalition. And then on top of that, it's a lot easier to say the old guy sucks than it is to say I'm making your life better. And there's not a ton of evidence so far. We're 18 days in that Donald Trump's going to be making people's life better. And so I think that the midterms will be good for the Democrats. I was just at a big Democratic confab in Palm Beach, and I was like, and I tell this to all your friends, or your kids, or your nephews, or nieces, if you are a Democrat that has independent thinking about what the party should do, like 2026 is the time to run. Like there will be wins for the Democrats in weird places in red states. They just won a state Senate seat in Iowa, in a place that went for Trump by 18 points, I think. Maybe it was 26 points. So there's an opportunity for a new, fresh crop of people if they're not too depressed, if they aren't under their bed, in the fetal position, if they want to stand up and take the bull by the horns. There's a moment in the midterms to do that. I feel a little less good about what happens after that. But the midterms in 2026, I think, should be very good for Democrats.
A question I asked Meacham the other night.
Yeah.
Where did the new nihilism come from in America? This notion that fuels MAGA, and that is my life sucks, my job sucks, my house sucks, nothing's working for me, let's burn it all the hell to the ground.
Man, I wish I knew. And here's the thing that really worries me, in addition to all the other really uplifting things I've been sharing, is that I don't know about you guys, but I sense that nihilism starting to infect people on the left too, in the post-election. I've had a number of just people in my life, not TV talking heads, regular people, voted for Kamala, coming up to me and being like, F it. Like, we should be breaking all the laws too. Like, if they're going to do it, like, what can we do to get back at him? Like, we got to burn it all down too. Or the cousin of that, which people coming up to me, which is saying, I don't care anymore. If Donald Trump can be the president, nothing matters. I'm no longer going to care about this or politics, and I'm going to completely check out from civil society. I've heard both of those sentiments at a very high degree, and it really worries me. I do think the phones, I think, are a big part of it. I think that, we were not meant to know this much about our neighbors. It was much better when you only knew the nice face they put on at the barbecue. You don't need to know about all of their private opinions. I think the phones are a big part of it. And I think that Donald Trump is a big part of it. I think he's a disease, and he's infected the country with his own mania and his own psychological problems. I'm sure there are other elements to it. I wish I knew.
When can Democrats pivot from the party that wins the argument to the party that wins the election?
Yeah, I mean, it should start in 2026. Like, get some wins, get everybody, get optimism, get positivity going. Look, I think that hopefully there will be a wake-up call. I'm concerned there hasn't been. I was pretty concerned about the DNC chairs race. I watched that debate, and that was pretty depressing to me because they were really concerned about winning the argument in that room.
And they have chosen the most earnest Democrat farm labor guy from Minnesota.
Yeah, so that worries me. But, look, there's a lot. Here's the thing. If we were sitting here in February of 2021, and you asked me to predict 2022 and 2024, at that point, Roe hadn't even been overturned, right? And so what happens in the 2022 midterms? I would have been totally wrong.
Halcyon days, yeah.
Yeah, right, exactly, right? So abortion becomes this massive issue in the midterms, which really helped Democrats, particularly in a few states. It saved us from Governor Kari Lake. And then, obviously, the dynamic changed lots to 2024. So it's kind of a fool's errand to try to predict. My message to Democrats is just let me feel your passion and your anger and your energy and go out and fight, and then we'll figure it out, right? Like, the dust will settle. Donald Trump might do everybody's job for them. This thing might be a total disaster, right? We got very lucky the first time around, Brian. People don't really kind of appreciate that the first 3 years of the Trump term were some of the quietest like in the world, right? Outside affairs. Like the economy was kind of moving along, it was getting better, it'd been a long recovery. There wasn't, there weren't any war. Like Donald Trump takes credit for the wars because I guess he Jedi mind tricked Hamas for not doing their terrorist attack. But there were not a lot of until COVID happened, and then he just botched that and just historic
1.1
proportion.
million Americans later.
Yeah. So. Is he going to be this lucky this time? I don't think so. I just think that and they've got a massive challenge ahead of them on the budget on the Hill, and they got a $4 to $5 trillion tax cut that they want to push through while they're shutting down government agencies. I don't know, man. He would have been better off, as I just said on the last panel, to get in there, be happy he got out of jail, golf, and just kind of let things move on autopilot. Because I think that a lot of stuff they're doing is going to backfire, and it's going to cause suffering, and it's going to hurt people, and maybe the Democrats will get lucky and they don't actually have to become the party that wins elections because Donald Trump will win them the next couple for them. I think that is not outside the realm of possibility.
Back to the first point you made, the norms that are falling away.
Yeah.
Daily basis.
Yeah.
Do you mean to say that when the Trump era is over, let's say just when the Trump term is over, you don't see a country going back to the wall that existed between the White House and Justice? The notion of an independent judiciary, the notion of an attorney general who is not the president's personal lawyer?
I don't know, man. I mean, I hope so. But again, going back to the nihilism I'm seeing on the left too, it's going to be really tough. It is going to take, for that to happen, it will take some really strong leaders of goodwill who are up for it. But I think that there are a lot of hiccups. I think that there are a lot of hurdles for us between now and then. And I think that if you're a young Democrat or a young Republican for that matter, when that happens in 2028, if you're 30 in 2028, when Trump started, you were 16, right? So you don't know anything different. And if you're a young Democrat who's 30 and you're a rising Democrat and you've watched Trump win while losing the popular vote and then try an insurrection and get away with it and get indicted 4 times and get away with it and then steal a Supreme Court seat, let's be honest, steal a Supreme Court seat, and now you're a rising person and you're in power and somebody tells you, all right, we're going to go back and play by the old rules again, okay? Isn't everything cool? Donald Trump's gone, everything's cool. I think there are going to be a lot of Democrats out there that are like, nope, no deal. We're going to take a Supreme Court seat of our own. Yeah, you know what I mean? So I don't exactly know how it plays out, but I just think that these things have ramifications. Like it isn't just like the movie Memento where you forget what happened the minute before. So I'm not optimistic, I guess I would say.
If we don't leave them with something...
I gave you the midterms. Why don't we turn it around? You leave them with something good. Why are you putting it on me?
I worked in cable. Ladies and gentlemen, I can't change the content, but I can deliver high-caliber interview subjects for this wonderful gathering. My friend Tim Muller.